I mean, with that, I guess we're good to go. This is a phenomenal turnout. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Zenkaikon 2023, for coming out. This is Japanese folk storytelling with myself. My name is Karl Custer. For about a decade, 12 years, I was an anime-specific, geek-specific stand-up comedian, MC, podcaster, all-purpose general host. I did anywhere from 12 to 25 conventions in a year for about a decade. I stepped away in about 2017, but this is my hometown con. This is also, I have friends who become family on the staff, which, by the way, thank you to the staff of this hotel for keeping us hydrated. In the moment. I'm debating. I'm gonna risk it. There seems to be enough of a distance. A little bit about my schedule later today. I have the honor of emceeing your cosplay masquerade later tonight. I'm really looking forward to that. One of my favorite times of the show. And then at 9 tonight, I will be at the Tullis, which I just discovered after 10 years is not in this building. The Tullis, I'm going to be doing a brand new hour of stand-up comedy. I am terrified, but we'll see how that goes. I tend to turn that out. And then tomorrow, I'm running the charity auction in this room, Sunday morning. I'm then doing a transitionary panel as I move into the next phase of my life. This May I graduate from Yeshiva University. Go Rabbis, which I guess is our basketball team. Not sure whether that's the mascot or the players, but they show up and they have a lot of love. I'll be doing a new panel, Teenage Trauma Recovery and Naruto. So I'm looking forward to seeing where a transition, the wheels are turning, right? Like there's enough, you've seen enough on TikTok, it starts to match up. Okay, so show of hands, how many are just even vaguely interested in live Japanese theater traditions? That's neat. How many are here because they recognize the name Uncle Yo? That's about, there's a big old guy. And how many just need a chair? Me too. Wonderful. So I'm going to be going over like 7 or 8 live Japanese specific theater arts and live performances that still go on to this day. Some of them are the oldest surviving performance traditions in the world that we know of. And long story short, I started getting this panel together summer of last year. I knew I wanted to come out and do some paneling and programming for Zenkai because, again, it's some of my favorite food venues in the con circuit. These are some of my favorite people to staff with. They always try to hook my husband and I up, so I'm always happy to come out to this. And we've been to Japan twice. Last year, Kat and I, my husband, we did a panel on planning your Japanese vacation. Now, lifetime theater nerd, I wanted to see live stuff. We did not plan and think ahead. That's how we learn. You learn from my mistakes because I don't think I'm going to. I don't think that's how my family works. What I want to say is that, so we as American consumers of Japanese media, anime or live action, I think we're a little firmer on Japan's idea that animation and graphic novel, sequential art, manga is a medium of storytelling more so than a genre for kids. That took a long time for America to shake that idea out of it. If it was a cartoon, it was clearly associated with Disney. Clearly it is only meant for children. Joke's on you. What about the works of wizards? What about the works of Fritz the Cat? What about and then once we get into anime, there can be gore, there can be consequence, there can be a sequential story. It's not just mouse dropping anvil on cat and everybody's fine. So I think after that, we recognize as nerds that there are fantasy and science fiction, mystery, drama, historical fiction for every age. At any anime convention, we are aware that the tropes of anime and manga, it's crying out the named attacks, it is striking a pose, it is yelling directly, and a lot of pointing. A lot of shonen is, I'm going to be the king of what are all of we? Great, bathroom attendees. I'm going to run this. A lot of yelling and a lot of showing emotions. I think part of that comes from a slight escape from reality. Just because, if you study it from the outside, from our perspective as Westerners, Japan seems to be a bit more humble. They're more communally minded. They're more, we pick up after ourselves because it's what the bulk of us want. being reserved and thoughtful with your words is more promoted and a little better in Japan. They also have an emotion that we don't have a word for in English. I'll pronounce it for you now. It's called shame. We don't have that. We have VTubers. Strap in, we're gonna have fun. So when you visit Japan, there's this unspoken standard to be quiet and clean and move on, don't rock the boat for everybody else's sake. And I believe this creates an outlet for art and expression to go even harder. And it fascinates me to study all of these different ways that they tell stories. This did not begin with anime and manga, the over-the-top presentation that we grow to love with this. This over-the-top, expressive, and superhuman dynamo is prevalent in almost all of their classic stage-based storytelling. Performance is the place to be larger than life, doing it now. And by studying how different cultures portray those universal human interactions and transitions, life and birth and death, and like trying to cross the street and the guy goes right, you kind of go right, and then they kind of go left, and and at some point you just go, why? Step around. Those universal experiences. We learn more about the differences that we all, more the similarities that we have versus the differences. The differences are just the aesthetic on the surface. The real humanity is down below. I want to let you know a little bit about like who I am and why I thought I specifically should set this panel up. I'll let you know. I have a BFA in playwriting. I've produced a bunch of theater in New York City over the years. Nothing was ever picked up, and that's okay. I have been doing stand-up, as I said in the beginning, and lecturing at anime cons for a good part over a decade. This spring I'll be graduating with my master's in clinical social work, and I'm hoping to go into like nerd therapy. A lot of us fall in the first part and need that second part. I am 2 out of 3 stages of the Game to Grow therapeutically aligned dungeon mastering course, which I would really love to eventually get into. You can actually run tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons as therapy-adjacent social skills building activities. I also just really like theater. I'm interning at the Actors Fund right now in New York City, and I get to meet a lot of old performers, and it's very fun. Let me establish a couple of ground rules and a couple of traditions. The first tradition that you come across when you start studying like Japan on stage is the koroko. That's the person that you see there wearing all black. They will be on stage next to the performer, but they are there to handle props and sometimes even move the costuming and the main actor. Under the signed social contract, you don't recognize this person. This person is not a person in the scene. They are the effect of the wind. They are how powerful this dude can jump. Sometimes you'll have 4 around one Kabuki actor just, ooh, look how high he can jump. You don't see us. Your first time, it's like, ha! And then by the third time, and this gets used in the early 2000s in a lot of great YouTube comedy, there's a great one called Kung Fu Koroko from like 2003, where a karate master is cutting people in half, and because of the extra korokos, the people that he's chopping just fall apart, thank him, and walk away. But it's all props and Velcro and tricks. It's a lot of fun. So this aesthetic has been going on since the 12, 13, 1400s. And what I love about studying Japan is their culture and history are so much of borrowing from someone else, internalizing it, breaking it apart, and making it better. The Chivas Distillery, Yamazaki. For everyone younger than 21, don't worry about it. They take performance, they break it down, they make it even more like themselves, even more Japanese. They isolate, and get something really refined and fascinating and aesthetically weird. That's what I love about it. It's I've never seen anything this colorful, this expressive. Tell me more. So in the middle stage, we've got like a Bunraku puppet, and then we've got like an old Kabuki samurai, and to the right, you see after a couple of generations, growing up knowing that is how performance goes. Stand, pose, yell your thing. It gets translated over and pulls itself over. Anime and manga did not start it. It is passed down culturally. Jump in and dive in. I want to tell you a little bit about the Iamoto system. Okay, so in the United States, if you get to a city, you can find a stand-up comedy club, or most of the time find a little theater. There's a black box theater right down the street here in Lancaster. If you have a new play you can just cast people to do the play. That's not really the mentality in Japan. The mentality is you are born into, your father or mother were a popular actor, or even better, they both are, you're a power couple, nepo baby, rock and roll. You know. It's passed down from generation to generation. Why? This keeps the stories and the techniques really, really condensed. Oh, the fourth generation of so-and-so to do this thing that their great-grandfather started. How cool is that? Almost this idea that you're so committed to the art, the personality, vanishes, and it's just a pure art form. It's a fascinating system. There's another argument that it's very elitist or classist, but it's nonetheless fun. And there are some times where modern aesthetics or modern stories get pulled into here. I'll tell you a story in a little bit about how Demon Slayer got into a 600-year-old Japanese theater tradition last summer. You know? Because one of my favorite things is when you talk about theater, you have to wonder, if you're going to put on something Shakespeare, will you do something traditional? Will you do something that is exactly as Shakespeare did it in the 1500s? Well, no, because everybody was suffering from syphilis and the bubonic plague. We won't be doing that. The ground was made of mud and dead Irish people. We're not going to do that. Will you do something innovative? Like, will you take Romeo and Juliet and put it in, like, Venice Beach and make it way too colorful, like DiCaprio did back there in 1996? Back when he was only dating 8-year-olds. Moving on. Alright, that was a low blow. That was a low blow. Lower than a sinking ship. Moving on. I know how to get away from sinking ships. You must not. Okay? Alright. So I put that in your basketball diary. Or do you modernize the story? And we go back and forth here in the States of if we're going to do something classic, let's do something new with it. If we're going to do something new, what if we did something classic with it? There's something very strict, and in one way restrictive, the way that Japan does it. But in that restriction, in that you can only move from here to here, that's where the creativity really comes in. Dungeons and Dragons, unlimited imagination, limited to 1 to 20. What's going to happen? We have the matrix, we have the game rules for that. So, how about this? I'm gonna start with Kamishibai. Yeah, I think I can skip that chapter. This comes in, let's go with the 1930s. This is pre-World War II Japan. There are a lot of after-school programs. There are a lot of rural communities. At this point, Japan's population is split 50-50. 50 out in farms and mountains and 50% in the cities. Well, you can't ignore those 50%. They need stories too. But the infrastructure wasn't laid yet for radio or television. What they did have were older men who had aged out of being able to do heavy industrial labor or trades, still with a great speaking voice, and everyone wants to hear what Grandpa has to say. So someone working at Kamishibai would attach illustrations and do a sequential art classic story, maybe a myth, maybe a story about a local yokai or spirit, something fun for the kids after school. If they had enough space on the back of their bicycle, you can sell snacks afterward. And who doesn't want a snack and a story after school? I would bolt home, just watch new episodes of Power Ranger at 4:30. What's the difference here? Probably whatever that monkey's doing to that dude with the cape down there. That's a glowing monkey eyeball. Kamishibai is not so much animation, but it is sequential frozen art. You have a painted thing, you move it into the next thing as you move on into the story, and the Kamishibai ka is allowed to play with the story, maybe a little improvising. That's kind of the fun part of it. Every town had its own Kamishibai, and it was just a fun way to get around. Old man, bicycle, this is Uber story time. Fun. Now, can you see anything similar to Kamishibai? Which there's, I believe it was out in Indiana or Iowa, but there was a public library that was using Kamishibai techniques to get groups of little kids to get better with public speaking and waiting to share by like opening up the little wooden box and telling their own stories, which I think is a fabulous way to get structured presentation in. Can you see anything like this now? Well, no, because everywhere in Japan, you're probably going to have access to either radio, television, internet, giant robots, I'm not here to judge. But you can get a sample of it. So, has anyone seen Kamishibai on Crunchyroll? Show of hands? Okay. If you like 3-minute short ghost stories, this is your jam. Okay, they have 10 seasons on Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll, which as you know, is a streaming service disguised as an advertisement platform. Versus Paramount Plus, which is an advertisement platform disguised as a streaming service. I don't need to know about the new Snow Day. I didn't like the original in 1999. I'm just here to watch reruns of Legends of the Hidden Temple. I don't need to see this ad 4 times. Get it together, Paramount, or leave. So, what I love is it's lower budget for a reason. It's not strictly like animation. There is fade, there's very minimal movement, and the characters, they move like stick figurines. Just like paper stick figurines. So your 3-minute story, oh, it's a ghost, you're dead! Which is the moral of every Japanese ghost story. It's a ghost, you're dead. So Kamishibai is a lot of fun. You can run through it really quick. They have a rotating cast of directors and actors. It's never the same thing twice. Very fun. From Kamishibai, which is like 1930s, I'm gonna go all the way back. So Japan has 3 classic, as like the World Arts Foundation defined, 3 truly Japanese unique storytelling platforms. They are no. Did you hear that right? No. Yes, you did. No. Not no. No. N-O-H. Kabuki, which we're gonna have a lot of fun with. And Bunraku. And as a puppeteer, I salivate thinking about Bunraku. Okay. How do we do this? Bunraku comes out in the 1600s, around the same time as Kabuki. Okay? The primary guy who did a lot of the writing, his name is Tokubai, and he ends up writing a lot of stories about the current court system. So in 1600s, it's not mythology, it's not a lot of gods and ghosts and spirits, it's the courtesan and the samurai and these tragic, action-packed love, death, romances. It's physical for the people. Now, what makes Bunraku incredible for anyone who grew up with Sesame Street or the Jim Henson tradition, which is anyone with a hand can be an actor. Okay, no. Let's talk about the elitism and classism here in Bunraku. You spent 10 years holding a puppet's feet and making it walk. 10 years doing 18 shows. After 10 years, you get to be the puppet's left arm. Hooray! Oh man, I'm gonna get a PhD in arm. And then after that, you become the lead. You get to move the head and the right arm. Now, what's so fascinating about a puppet whose face doesn't move? That means your imagination gets projected onto the crazy puppet. These are 4-foot-tall puppets with 2.5 people in full choreo. Bunraku is about forbidden plays that end in death. What's fun is they were originally just heads and eventually developed the bodies. Okay, so this is the Bunraku Theater in Osaka, which if you stand outside demanding tickets for about half an hour, they ask you to leave. Learn from my mistakes. Learn from my mistakes. This is a 4-foot-tall puppet here on the right. And you can barely see in the upper left 3 people it takes to operate. Now, when you have 3 people on a 4-pound puppet, the puppet can clearly jump and with coordination do, I don't know, cartwheels, somersaults, climb up the sides of mountains, but it can't move or talk. That's why the stage is laid out in this specific way. The stage has a front piece. So the testero, that's the proper name of the puppet. The taiyu, which is the storyteller, by the way, no matter how many cast members, one dude is doing all the talking and narration. You spent 30 years to learn to work a puppet and you don't even get to say, didn't I do it for you? Bandro, you don't. You don't ever do the dialogue of the puppet. This guy does the dialogue of the puppet and is very straight. He does not alter his voice whatsoever. He just goes in a monotone. And the puppets get to sword fight. If that sounds whack, it is, and it's wonderful. The Sankyo is a raised backstage area. progress a little bit more. Okay, so on the top left there is kind of what the stage looks like. The front part where no one is standing, that's where the puppets are gonna go, they're gonna live, they're gonna walk, they're gonna step, they're gonna stand and swing their swords. And that back area is gonna be full of percussion instruments. Percussion instruments, if you have a free seat next to you, go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead and raise your hand. Thank you so much, staff. We want to keep everybody safe within precautionary fire procedures. We do it. No one needs to burn. Maybe the people who told me to leave. Maybe. There's 6 percussionists. No, 6 percussion instruments. One dude doing percussions to emphasize movement, and the storyteller. Okay, so big question on Bunraku. I want to answer the question that you had about these 3 dudes down there. Are they in full Koroko? No. So here's something interesting that I discovered in my research. And I only discovered this after interviewing a geisha on a first trip to Kyoto. When you get old enough and certified enough in an art form, be it geisha, be it Bunraku, in certain degrees, when you get so talented, when you get so ingrained that your name is linked to that performance art, you don't have to do the makeup or the full costume anymore. Because the weird assumption is, I am so into this, we cannot be separated. Older, experienced geisha will not do makeup on their face. They don't have to, they put in the work. Isn't that interesting? Because like as cosplayers get older, they do more and more and more and more. As Japanese classic storytellers, they do less and less and less because it's the skill. So my internship at the Actors Fund in New York City, I do programming for older adults, and these are people who have performed their whole lives. These have been writers, voiceovers, directors. In their 70s and their 80s, they're doing one-person shows at the end of this current semester. To see someone who has had a lifetime to perfect the instrument of the human body is so awe-inspiring. It's so good. It's so neat. Is it better than Bunraku? Sure. Bunraku plays take over an hour and a half. Can you watch anything like Bunraku now? This like 400-year-old puppet storytelling history? Okay, well, my research showed like one thing. I found Ayasura Sakan. Okay, so he is a great Bunraku puppeteer. He's like 21 years old. Ooh, he's already a master storyteller, but he's shy. He's not shy when he has his little red-haired puppet who does all the speaking for him. I think the best way to describe this is Murder Me Wrote Elmo. Okay, what does he do? What does a genius puppeteer do? He drives around and solves murder mysteries. He solves murder mysteries with a puppet. The puppet solves murder mysteries and does the interrogating. Where is the purpose of the gimmick for this? Rocco, jump off that bridge. Elmo did it. Push, Rocco. What are some of the highlights of this anime and manga? Probably that it ends. It's not super good. But isn't that interesting, though? This is one of Japan's founding theater principles. What does it say when no manga artist or TV producer or movie producer will make something new of it, will touch this art form? There's a respect there, isn't there? Interesting. Something even more interesting, we're going to jump into something truly out of this world. It's one thing to describe, but this is what it looks like. Let's go sound what? Or let's not. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. The sound is loud. Clink, 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 bang, 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 click, clack, clack. They match up with the puppet's stilted, heavy movements, just like we do in pro wrestling. In pro wrestling, yes, every movement activates the wooden slots beneath the stage. Every click, every fall emphasizes. That's the point of the percussions and the instruments. It makes the scene bigger and brighter. So this is a production, you see the puppet climbing up the stepladder. Crazy cool. But it goes on for like 2 hours. What's even better? Something old that goes on for 4.5 hours. No, it's not your grandpa at Thanksgiving. Let me skip ahead. It's Kabuki. Okay, Kabuki. We're gonna have a lot of fun talking about this one. A lot of anime tropes that look so bizarre are coming from this, are being taught and informed by Kabuki. It's one of the three pillars of Japanese legacy theater. Okay, so it begins in like the 1600s, around the same time as Bunraku, when a priestess, that's the important part, S, is dancing on a dry riverbed in Kyoto. The shogunate at the time says, I didn't know women could go outside and people are watching this. How do we make her make us money? So Kabuki comes along and it can be about anything. These are stories that take place in the 1600s, so like courtesans and foreigners and samurais, Buddhist priests being kicked out of their homes. These are big, bawdy stories, and what's interesting is that the samurai class love coming up to these big, bawdy, raunchy stories. People get to go around trying to sell cups of sake, but the problem is they're also prostituting the actresses out to samurai. Shogunate says, nope, we're cutting that right now. All of the actors are going to be played strictly by men. All the female characters, all the child characters, all the male characters are all going to be played by men. This stops prostitution to the samurais for about an hour. And that's what but indirectly, that's how the Onagata comes up. See if I am there. So Kabuki is going to be all spectacle, tons of special effects for the time, including things like stage fog. The percussions are back, a lot of showmanship, swordmanship. This is when the actor as a class comes in. So you were born into it, you weren't considered ready to get on stage until you were about 40 years old because your mother or father was a kabuki actor as well. But even if you were a top actor, you were not going out to brothels and gambling dens with politicians and businessmen. You were in a class on your own. You certainly had fans in the same way that like a near 40-year-old anime-specific comedian can have fans, but it only kind of exists in the building, right? You can't like validate and get free parking from the Hyatt from just dropping my name. I have tried this. Jumping on, so a couple of phrases I'm going to drop for you. A lot of these historical fun fictions. The historical drama was called the Jidaimono. You're also going to learn about the Mi, which is the frozen pose. Every time an actor or a character enters the scene to do their scene and leaves the scene, if this sounds familiar in an anime or manga, stop me. They strike a pose, yell their name, and then leave really characteristically appropriate for them. Kabuki's been around since the 1600s, so every color, every movement, every pattern on a costume has some significant meaning. Who knows the meaning? The people putting it on the stage. That's accessibility for you, a paywall. Let me see, you've got roles such as the Tachiyaku, and you've got the mean villain roles, which are always the best roles, always play an audition for the villain. The Katakiyaku, should have underlined that, thank you, and the Koyaku. So, Onagatas are born up there, it's over-the-top language. This is really the beer and pretzels party. Everyone's coming out for a 4.5-hour show. There are stage dramas with ghosts and devils and comedic slapstick in between. Let's talk about some of the aesthetics that you're gonna see. The costumes. The costumes can weigh up to 60 pounds. You are leaping on stage for 20 minutes, howling at the top of your lungs in 60 pounds. This is athleticism at its best. The Komodori technique of painting your face. Red meant hero. Let me think. It's blue and black for villains, blue and brown for demons. Married women blackened their teeth, which was interesting. I couldn't find a reason why in my research. Oh well, moving on. See, you know what? Why do they blacken their teeth?
Yeah, because the iron and vinegar mixture actually kept their teeth from decaying, but you had to do it every day to protect them. So it showed you had the money and the time to put the mixture together and spend blackening your teeth on it.
Like iron?
Yeah, iron, vinegar, vinegar, and a few other things, and you switch.
There's it like so you became a James Bond villain to show you you're rich? Badass!
Like 5 to 10 minutes to get the correct coating every day.
Wow! And you all complain about Invisalign. Instruments, you had a whole instrument instrument section of people banging away. It is ruckus, it is wild, it is crazy. We're having fun with this. What is the Kagagoe other than Tim Curry's best movie? Moving on. The Kagagoe were other actors who were off to the side yelling commentary. The Greeks had their chorus. Kabuki has the Kagagoe. Whoa! Everyone react that way. Manzai! Everyone else go Manzai! They were the hype men. They carried around every troupe. They were either young children who weren't, or trainees who weren't yet ready to get on stage, or just local friends. It's so fun and so bizarre. It's so much fun. The character-specific movements are called the ropos, depending on who you were. If you were a monkey god, you struck this pose, no one else did, and so did they, apparently. So this brings up an interesting question. So we see a couple of aesthetic similarities, don't we, between the Bunraku and the Kabuki, larger than life, some of the face paint, some of the superhuman ball joint movements. So the question is, after 400 years, whom is mimicking whom? Are the Bunraku puppeteers mimicking what they've grown up watching on Kabuki, or are Kabuki an attempt of humans cosplaying giant puppets? I don't know. This isn't the point of the panel. I just like puppets, you guys. Deal with that. Let me see if I can get the sound up for this video. There is a Kabuki documentary right now on Netflix. It is ironically called Kabuki. This is not it. It's very fun, though. This is something that I picked up from a PBS documentary. You see the Koroko actively moving, he will help the actor leap, he will costume change in the middle, he will eventually throw that spear across the stage into someone. This is what you mean by the Mie. Drums are going non-stop at this, audience is losing their stuff. He's doing the pose! Can you smell that the rock is cooking? And did I just age myself? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. You don't have to judge. You don't have to judge! Stop it! Stop it! Okay, you're done judging. Onagata, younger woman, older woman, no matter what, all done by men. Of course. Why? Because it was not a good industry to be in. You didn't want your daughter to get on stage and be an actor. How dare you? Just a little bit of the full clown white makeup that it takes to get onto here. It's so fascinating, you guys. A full Kabuki is unlike anything you will probably ever see. All right, can I skip ahead, Mr. Robot? Hooray, I did it with my face. Okay, from Kabuki, we go to something truly Japanese. No. Yes? No. Okay. I don't have a clip for this. No is slow. No comes out over 600 years ago, and they're telling the exact same stories. No does not adapt or adopt with the times. It's great for old people. Not to perform, and you'll understand why in a moment. The original author was a gentleman named Zaimi, who wrote like the 30 original, that is the core of all No students study. Imagine only studying 30 texts, the same 30 texts for the same 400 years. At some point, flip to the last page and just say the butler or the zebra did it. Moving on, something else. This is deeply tied to the gods. While Kabuki is, I'm gonna kill you for killing my lady, No is philosophical. These are ancient stories about death, resurrection, reincarnation. There's a lot of Buddhism that moves its way to influence how these stories are going. While Kabuki is all blood and sex and beer and pretzels, No is hummus, wine, pizza, and maybe a little LSD, because it's, I wouldn't know, but it is coming on with a solid mask, an expressionless mask, and yelling, slow, poetic prose. While you move at half this speed, you cross the stage. What's the difference between me and this tree? These go on for 3 hours. And yet it perseveres. And yet it perseveres. There has to be some merit that the Western brain is lacking. Or I can make a joke about it. I don't know the intrinsics of it, but it's so fascinating to me, damn it. Every male in this, every actor in this has to be male. Once again, a bit of a sausage party. We wrap up outside of the sausage party. You'll be very happy that the sausage party ends. It's okay, it's okay. This is going to be your most traditional. The mask does not move. Why doesn't the mask move? The philosophy behind the mask not changing or moving is You project on, and they do this with Hello Kitty. They still do this today. You project what that blank face is expressing and feeling. It is just as much your relationship to the presentation as the presentation itself. Theater does not exist in a vacuum. Take that, YouTubers. You need audience participation. You need that breathing in the room. You need that weird body-worn space of someone next to you. That's actually why the jokes are actually landing a bit more right now. If you were all spread out and comfortable, none of you would be laughing. But you're so pressed to others right now, like on a Delta airline flight. Okay, some of you know what I'm talking about. They should not have survived the pandemic, but they did. What else can I tell you about that? So Kabuki was the first ever Japanese production to bring in a curtain. It went down, it went up. And in Kabuki, you had a projection stage like a drag queen runway, which was 3D entertainment in the 1600s because the character could come out and talk to the audience. This does not happen in No. In No, everything is sacred. There is that direct brown colon tunnel that you see there. All three pillars are named. Every wall, every pillar of the stage has a name and a Buddhist philosophical significance. And at this point, you're like, I want to go home and watch more Bluey. I am done. You know, at some point, you have to ask yourself, am I just having my kids watch Bluey, or am I into Bluey? Bingo is a treasure, and it's the real main character. It's Bingo's show. Bluey, stop him. Bandit makes me feel inferior as a cat dad, let alone a grown person. Little bit that you can understand about the roles, okay? The Shite is your protagonist. They are most likely going to be a Buddhist monk on some sort of philosophical journey. Interesting, right? Sure, I guess. The Shitashure is going to bounce ideas off of. They're going to be the semi-central second build protagonist. They're going to be the Shite's companion. The Waki's going to be the antagonist, which is always the best role. Always play the villains, always audition for the villain. They're going to be the evil, vengeful ghost. They're going to be the dead lover come back in the life of the tree, and the tree smacks down. What have you? Yeah, fight tree. Why not? The Waki's going to be your devil, your demon, your yokai. They're going to have the fun roles. In between, you have your koten, your stagehands. Full koroko, once again. Kyogen are going to be like the in-between main show acts and comedies, the hayashi. You still have those players and those percussion that you're going to see in Kabuki, in Bunraku. If it's older, it's because it's got an old percussion center. Drummers always persevere. Drummers are good. It's worth noting, despite No never evolving or growing, they will, as fundraisers, experiment with something. So this is 2023? Are you sure? December of 2022, they made an original Demon Slayer No play. Misogyny. I have no idea how that went. That's just my interpretation. Can we watch anything like No now? No. But how about this? I'll make you a deal. Instead of going full 600-year tradition, let's break every rule we've set up. Let's go full punk. Let's go full guerrilla aesthetic theater. Let's go, instead of safe and traditional, to something jutting, abnormal, and painful. Let's go straight to Butoh. Okay. This is where Juji Ito gets a lot of those expectations. Butoh is contemporary and avant-garde. Butoh comes up in the 1960s. Okay, what's happening with Japan in the 1960s? 20 years after what major world event? World War II. Okay. How did Japan handle World War II? Spoiler, they don't win it. Dancers break away from tradition. Artists break away from tradition because to rebuild or now just pay off the people who invaded them, there's no money now for the arts, the traditional arts. Some things pause. The National Kabuki Theater shuts down for 5 years. What are we going to do with old men who play with puppets? That's a weird question. Butoh starts to think and reject, maybe tradition led us wrong. They had lost their emperor, they lost their body of government, they lost their autonomy, they lost their perceived role in the world. So 20 years later, this concept of why are we still doing this traditional thing that got us smacked down in the first place? Butoh is unlike anything else you'll ever see. People are in, instead of the full face white of Kabuki, full body white. This is the only time you will see a nude dancer or performer. This is the only theater that will be guerrilla, as in a troupe of 12 of them will just be in the middle of a park, slowly and painfully and juddingly making their way across a pond, or 4 of them almost painfully wandering through, following one guy through a farmer's market. Why? Break away from tradition. Butoh is 3 colors: white, black, red. The 3 base primary fearful colors. The first 3 colors we learn as people. The majority of it began with doing the Japanese poses, so like the bows or the prayers, and making it contorted and painful. It is hard to watch these things. The oldest Bunraku performer passed away 4 years ago at the age of 102. Why is full white grandma just writhing on the stage, and why do I feel so uncomfortable watching this? How cool is that? The full kick to the teeth of tradition. Let me see, this also inspired Junji Ito works. I said that. A lot of the Silent Hill grunge aesthetic. Those nurses from the first movie, a lot of them were American Japanese trained in Butoh. That's where the juddy comes in. This is not something grounded. We are struggling, we are striving, and stuck in permanent horror. Let's see if I can break from tradition. Now, this is nowhere in anime or manga, interestingly enough. So I found a clip. Where is the stage? Where is the audience? Where are our grounded rules and expectations? Why don't they work for us anymore? Maybe the world was wrong, maybe tradition led us astray. Butoh is fascinating AF, you guys. I hope you get to find something. Years ago at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden in New York City, we had a Butoh troupe just roam through the Rose Garden. It was not on the schedule for a reason. They wanted people to be surprised. So was I. Butoh is so fascinating. Though there is, if I can see the head. Can I watch it now? Yes, you can. It's a hard film to find. This is 1990. It's a bit more of like a drama. It's a little Perfect Blue-esque, but it does go over a Butoh performer going through the ranks of it. Like, is my insanity the real insanity? Am I really the character? Is the character really me? Great to see you, Joy, again. There was a new Butoh school that was established in Palermo, Italy in 2000. I have no idea how it's going now. They don't return my calls. What's fascinating, isn't it? The traditional country, so staunch and planted in its ways, and yet this comes out full swinging, the complete opposite of our expectations. Versus the setup and the punchline. I'll do this really, really quickly. Manzai has been around since 2 people got into an argument. Manzai is very fast. It's 2 people, super fast wordplay, correcting each other. It's the Tsukuma and the Boke. It's basically like, hey, have you ever thought of what it would be like for us to be trapped in an elevator? Instead of agreeing to the premise and moving on, all the words are absolutely cut. There's no background, there's no stage, it's just your 2 performers dressed how they want to be. Ever wonder what it was going to be like if you were trapped in an elevator? Oh man, it stopped. I guess we should start rehearsing. You always think about work. We're trapped in an elevator. How are we getting out? Do you have a flashlight? Do you have matches? No, I don't have anything that produces light. Just the flashlight on my phone. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. There's no breathing. There's not like a space to shove a piece of paper between the 2 of them if they do it well. This gets in its heyday, 1933. Television and radio are getting out there in the cities and slowly branching into the rural areas. So if you were fast and funny and had a set bit, you could get a radio spot, and then maybe a TV spot, maybe a sponsorship. And that was kind of the goal. I mean, we had, who was it? It was Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. Yeah, we had Lewis and Martin. We had Nichols and May. We had Laurel and Hardy. Japan had whoever those guys are. Just joking. I did have a slide, but without the speed and dialogue, without the audio, that's okay. What I will suggest is that you check out Netflix. They're a bit more humanist dramedies, but it is neat to see what it's like to get up and try to do something unique, something that is yours within a strict boundary. So Hibana Spark, I really enjoyed. Asakura Kid is only 2 hours. I liked Hibana Spark a little bit better, but look, if you've got a free weekend, why the heck not? Now, if you want to talk about being creative within boundaries, oh baby, sit down, cross your feet, jump ahead, robot. Obey me, robot. Ecstatic. We're going to talk about Rakugo. Has anyone heard of Rakugo before? Okay, you know exactly where this is going to go. Get ready for it. You can do anything that you imagine within limits. Every Bunraku, gentlemen, they'll learn eventually. They come out with 2 props, a sensu, which is a folding fan, and a tenagui, which is a folded cloth. They come out and they sit on a very specific cushion in a very specific way to cross their ankles. They bow and greet the audience. Rakugo is one person telling a story, and they play all the roles. Now, I'm not talking like it's a voice actor fully. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting. You can have as many as 16 characters voiced by one person, and it's not like going back and forth like I do. It's very subtle how they go back and forth. This takes a good 20 years before you're even recognized as a Bunraku stand-up performer. You can do some of the classics, that's what the openers do, or you can start to write and modernize some of your own. There is the Minarai, the apprentice, the Zenza level is the opener, the Fukutsuma, and then the Shinuchi. Shinuchi is your headliner, your mainliner. They're allowed to write new Bunraku and play around with it. Why only the fan and the folding piece of paper? Well, a folding fan can be your chopsticks, very clearly. They can be your bullhorn. They can be a script that you're reading from. Why the folded paper? Why the folded towel? Because you can unfold it and enjoy a hot baked potato on a cold evening. You can have it be an ascot if need be. It can be your surrender flag. Whatever those props are, you can pull them in. You can be your little folding purse. Rakugo is great for radio, and it turns out really great for children's television. It really reaches its heydays in the 1950s and 60s. When you plug into television and we need something traditional Japanese to remind us of who we are, there's an old story saying that you shouldn't down a fish twice. This is Grandpa Tell Me a Story time. Rakugo evolves, which fascinates me. There are house names that get passed down to apprentices, not necessarily married into the family. It breaks that one tradition. So, I mean, for example, like what does a Rakugo story even look like? I mean, you can have a quick opening joke. Did you hear about this Hanazuki? She had a horrible car accident that completely mangled her face. Oh, what a tragedy. But don't worry, her rich husband got her the most talented plastic surgeon in all of Japan, and her face looks exactly the same as before the accident. What a tragedy. There are funny stories. There are erotic stories. There are scary stories. There's something so powerful about one person who's really good at their job. So, jumping into a little bit of Rakugo, that's exactly what it looks like. There's a raised stage. There's a dude. There's a pillow. There's a robe. There's a mic. Those are your elements. And most importantly, there is the audience. Can you watch anything like it now? I'm so grateful that you asked. Okay, 2 seasons, 4 generations on Crunchyroll. Has anyone seen this? Has anyone seen show up? The older I get, as someone who dedicated my life to performing arts, the more this show resonates. This is following Japan throughout 60 years of its culture through one storytelling medium, following one family in the rise and fall and the need for people to just entertain and speak. It's a wonderful rivalry. It's a wonderful loving relationship. It has some of the best internal writing I think I've ever seen, not just in a Japanese medium, but just as a medium in general. Theater kids, this is your swan song. It's beautiful. So check out Showa Genroku. Just type in Rakugo. There's not a lot of competition. There's also a recent manga that came out last year, Akaname Banachi. I don't know if it wrapped up just yet. I dropped out maybe 30 issues into it. It's a lot of fun. It's a shonen, so she's clearly going to be the best Rakugo in the room. It's fun. You'll get into some really nitty-gritty technology. A lot of fun, but you can also go online because there is a Polish-Canadian-born Rakugo Shuniji. His name is Katsura Sunshine. He inherited the Katsura name. He does live Zoom shows and had an off-Broadway tenure for about a year and a half. Then COVID hit, and he was just doing home Zoom shows. Did you do one, Kitty?
He's performing in Philly in April.
He's back in Philly. Wow. What did Philly do to deserve it? Not the Super Bowl. Go Birds. We all know what we do to the Pulse. You can find him on YouTube. He does newer, modern Rakugo and also just breaks it down every time. He's just one of those larger-than-life fun characters. When we went, he told the story of the Death God. It was October when Kat and I bought tickets. It was so weird for something that quiet to be that terrifying. The lights did not change. There was no music. There was just one guy telling the story of someone who thought they could trick a god of death. And 30 seconds later, he had us laughing out of our seats. It's fascinating what the power of one performer can do and how we're into it. It's also such a bummer that we only have 10 minutes left, and it's been such a sausage fest. When are we gonna get to the chicks? I'm so glad you asked! Takarazuka, baby! This is fun. All right, who does know Takarazuka? Okay, we're gonna have a whole lot of fun. So there are no lesbians in the room. All right, we're gonna change that. We're gonna change that real quick. Takarazuka. How do you remember Takarazuka when you're doing a Google search later? Okay, does anyone remember the Final Fantasy victory song? Okay, this is it. Takarazuka. So, Takarazuka. Okay, so Takarazuka sits on your face. Yeah, you're not gonna forget that now, are you? Takarazuka, an all-woman Western Broadway-style variety venue show. Originally 1913, there was a politician and a railroad baron. His name was Ichizo Kobayashi. He has a little town called Takarazuka, which, by the way, is also where a certain grandfather of modern manga grew up. Does anyone know the name Osamu Tezuka? Osamu Tezuka's work goes into influence Takarazuka, which later goes to influence him into creating Princess Knight and a bunch of things. The Osamu Tezuka Museum is a stone's throw from the Takarazuka main theater. So you take the train out, you have a wonderful spa day, you see a live show, you go get your manga on, you visit the museum, and then you go home and have a lovely day. So what does Kobayashi do? He sets up a space where women can show up, and because these are students, because what people love after a long day of going out to hot springs is watching ladies with exposed legs, but these are not actors, no, not shameful. These are students, and for 2 years, these students put on 4 shows a day, and because they are students, it's not only not shameful, it's also, he doesn't have to pay them, because capitalism! The running villain of every social worker versus capitalism. What can I tell you about Takarazuka? They would train young ladies of very high-class families because of their 3 pillars of modesty, fairness, and grace. These were shows in which all the roles were played by women. All the men parts played by women. All the girl parts played by women. This would teach women how to be the best possible housewives and servants to their husband. You're funny. But this is how it works. This is what got people out. So girls from good families would end up becoming good wives. This practice of hyper-feminization, it brings in an interesting flip side to what we've seen in No and Kabuki, this practice of hyper-feminization and hyper-masculinity. It kind of brings up like, are those just words? Is this just a philosophy? What is gender? Is it kind of a social construct? Is it an illusion created by clothing? Because you know who doesn't care who wears the skirt? The skirt! The skirt's never gonna care who wears it. It's a skirt! All-female, cast Western Broadway-style spectacle. Stage fog, moving theater pieces, the costumes. Okay, you have the otokoyaku. You cannot dress or behave in a masculine manner outside of the theater. The otokoyaku is the male role. Angles. They do up their face to have more angled faces, and they are allowed to have sexual agency. They want to bump and grind hard angles. I want to embrace you. I want to hold you, but you're on the other side of the stage, and I can't get across it. Versus the musumeyaku has the universal female characteristic of being in the room. They're helpless, they're meek, they need to be rescued, they've got a giant puffy dress. But there's just as much fandom and fervent fan following for the male as there are the female roles. The overall aesthetic is androgynous and therefore pretty. The main theater in Takarazuka has 2,500 seats. The Tokyo Theater, built in 1934, only 2 years later, has fewer seats. I think it's either 1,500 or 1,600. Look at the old Hollywood aesthetic, the bright red carpeting, the over-the-top. This is not your humble wooden theater to see the 8th generation. No. This is get the girls out. It's a tragic love romance. There is an opening act, which is a 40-minute long, fully staged Broadway weeping itself tragic love story, and then there's a main 2-hour show that's a tragic love story. You're starting to see an aesthetic, aren't you? The costumes. Every show ends with all 600 cast members coming out in ostrich feathers. They bow, and the back row goes, it's all out of it. They come out and they do one last review song. This is very Barry Manilow. This is very Frank Sinatra. These are very fun roles. In fact, Lincoln Center in New York City did an all Takarazuka review of Chicago, and that was the first time my husband ever saw Chicago. And I was like, I like lady legs now. I said, yes, you do. The costumes go over the top, but Takarazuka evolves with the times. It will influence anime, and anime will influence Takarazuka. We're also going to go in 2016, in 2016, in 2016, they made an Abraham Lincoln musical called For the People. Oh, you won't be doing that in 30 seconds. Robert E. Lee is a character in the Abraham Lincoln musical. Ulysses S. Grant is not a character. Barry Lincoln is a character, as is Abraham Lincoln's son. They don't go over how he dies. He walks up some steps, and then there's a gunshot, and then he comes out in all white and ostrich feathers. Frederick Douglass is a character. Did you think Takarazuka was going to ship in a black woman to perform Frederick Douglass? You're funny. It is so bizarre. In 2019, there was a original Leonardo da Vinci musical tragedy romance, which they just ripped from the script of Les Miserables, and it was magnificent. Because it was all the single ladies. How many single ladies? All. This is catnip for old Japanese lesbians, and God bless it. It plays the game of telephone because, as we said, there was an anime about a cross-dressing knight, Rosa Versailles. It gets a Takarazuka review. Who ends up watching this review? The creator of Sailor Moon, who creates 2 cousins, F yourself off, late 90s tsunami, who creates the actual The Gays with their helicopter crashing through walls and race cars, because that's how the gays travel. Sailor Moon gets a Takarazuka show. And the mangaka writes that into the show. So it's this game of telephone back and forth. Revolutionary Girl Utena, fencing lesbians. It gets a Takarazuka show, which inspires the anime, which inspires a Takarazuka review based on the anime, which inspires. You see this game of telephone going back and forth until it gets into Oran High School, until it gets into like doing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Takarazuka shows, which, how? And why can't we have it now? It is so much fun, and I don't have time to tell the halftime story. I will just say, if you are a fan of the review shows and the glitz and glamour of old Broadway, moving, full 50-foot wide sets, brilliantly painted, immaculate costuming, over the top, and you just want to feel good, well, you can. Kageki Shoujo, right now, there's 2 manga volumes. There's a 12-episode single self-contained story on Crunchyroll right now. I hope you get into it. They do a lot about the tradition, the history of the school, and what modern interpretations of it look like today. A little bit of also, I heard clicking and ticking for a moment, and I thought we had a better, like, at least a 5-minute warning system. It doesn't have to start ticking. These are folktale stories, these are adaptations from modern work, and they are just a lot of fun, and it's over the top. How over the top? Oh, please stop asking that. This is a PBS promo. This is how every show ends. What happens to the ostriches? No, that's a legitimate question. Where do they go? They're just being harvested for their feathers. This is how every show ends, no matter what you watch. It is elegant, it is lavish, it is beautiful. That's about where I sat. It is rock set kickline. It is Japan taking our aesthetic, watching it and filtering it down to make it something truly unique, bizarre, and wonderful. And why won't they hug me? Okay. It only gets bigger and more beautiful. And I wish you could do much worse for your summer than get into Takarazuka fandoms, because the main theater has 5 separate casts, 80 different performers per cast, thousands of women audition a year, 40 of them get in. So even something that fun and that new, the classism and the elitism. But after nearly 700 years of storytelling, where are we now? I think that telling stories and interacting or singing or expressing or understanding that human need to witness, performance, explore themes and feelings bigger than life, maybe make ourselves cry, make others laugh. In studying these wonderful mediums of performance from an outsider's lens, the genuine humanity comes through every time. It's universally human to tell and hear stories and charge far too much for tickets. I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, everybody. I'm Uncle Yo. You have yourselves a wonderful show. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.